Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. The Supreme Court delivered a historic ruling, striking down President Trump's sweeping tariffs imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This decision came after months of heated legal battles and intense public debate, with both supporters and critics anxiously awaiting the outcome. This landmark decision not only dismantles a core part of Trump's second-term agenda, but also sends shockwaves through global markets. Investors and financial institutions scrambled to adjust, as the ruling immediately impacted stock prices and currency values around the world. The court ruled that only Congress, not the president, can regulate commerce and levy tariffs, reaffirming the separation of powers at the heart of the U.S. Constitution. Legal scholars hailed the decision as a powerful reminder of the checks and balances that define American democracy. For businesses and consumers, the ruling signals a potential return to economic stability after years of uncertainty and rising prices. Small business owners in particular hope for relief from unpredictable costs, while families across the country look forward to more affordable goods and a steadier financial outlook. Economically, the decision could trigger the largest tariff refund in U.S. history, up to $1 trillion, posing unprecedented logistical challenges for the Treasury Department. Processing these refunds will require new systems and oversight, and could take months if not years to fully implement. Politically, it's a major blow to Trump's America First trade doctrine, forcing the administration to seek new, more limited strategies. The White House now faces mounting pressure from both allies and opponents to redefine its approach to international trade and economic policy. The international community sees this as a step toward repairing strained alliances and restoring a rules-based trading system. Many foreign leaders have welcomed the decision, expressing hope for renewed cooperation and more predictable trade relations with the United States. Yet the ruling doesn't resolve deeper debates about protectionism and national security. This is just the end of one chapter in America's evolving role in global trade. As policymakers and citizens alike grapple with the implications, the future of U.S. trade policy remains uncertain, and the world watches closely for what comes next. The turmoil began on April 2, 2025, Liberation Day, when President Trump announced sweeping tariffs on imports from over 70 countries, citing emergency powers under IEEPA. These tariffs, ranging from 10% to 50%, touched nearly every sector of the U.S. economy and were justified by linking trade deficits, drug trafficking, and immigration to national security. Critics argued the move was a constitutional overreach, using emergency powers to bypass Congress's authority over taxation and trade. Business leaders warned of supply chain chaos and higher consumer prices, while economists predicted inflation and economic slowdown. The Liberation Day tariffs became a direct challenge to the constitutional order, setting up a high-stakes legal battle over the limits of presidential power. The outcome would determine not just the fate of these tariffs, but the very boundaries of executive authority in economic policy. In the wake of Trump's sweeping tariff announcement, a wave of lawsuits from businesses, trade groups, and state governments surged into the federal courts almost overnight, signaling the start of a high-stakes legal battle. Plaintiffs argued that the new levies not only threatened to cripple their operations and force layoffs, but also violated key constitutional principles by bypassing Congress's authority over trade policy. With businesses facing mounting losses and uncertainty, the courts consolidated the cases and put them on a fast track, recognizing the immense economic harm and the need for swift resolution. On August 29, 2025, the Federal Circuit Court delivered a landmark decision, siding with the plaintiffs and declaring that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act does not give the president sweeping authority to impose tariffs on such a broad scale. Yet, the court allowed the tariffs to remain in place temporarily, citing fears of immediate market chaos and economic instability, while the administration wasted no time in appealing directly to the Supreme Court. Recognizing the case's extraordinary national significance and the far-reaching consequences for both the economy and the separation of powers, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the appeal. The administration's legal team argued that the president must have broad authority to act swiftly in the name of national security, especially in a rapidly changing global landscape. Opponents countered that only Congress has the constitutional power to set tariffs, warning that unchecked executive action could undermine the nation's system of checks and balances. The rapid timeline from the initial announcement to Supreme Court review in less than 6 months highlighted the unprecedented urgency and the stakes for American businesses and workers. Across the country, companies faced existential threats, with livelihoods and entire industries hanging in the balance, as the judiciary raced to provide clarity and stability. As the nation watched, the stage was set for a historic constitutional showdown, one that would ultimately define the limits of executive power and shape the future of American governance. The legal battle centered on 2 opposing views of presidential authority under IEPA. The Trump administration argued the act gave the president sweeping power to impose tariffs in response to any foreign threat, including economic ones. Plaintiffs countered that the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the exclusive power to regulate commerce and levy taxes, and that IEPA was never meant for broad economic policy. The Supreme Court ultimately sided with the plaintiffs, warning that unchecked executive power would undermine the separation of powers and set a dangerous precedent. The Liberation Day tariffs had immediate, severe economic consequences. Supply chains were disrupted, costs soared, and companies like J.M. Smucker and Purdue Farms faced price hikes and layoffs. The uncertainty chilled investment and forced businesses to divert resources from growth to crisis management. Economists blamed the tariffs for fueling inflation and slowing economic growth, calling them a self-inflicted wound. The Supreme Court's decision now means the Treasury may have to refund up to $1 trillion in collected duties, a windfall for businesses, but with uncertain benefits for consumers. Experts warn that prices won't drop overnight. It could take months for supply chains to adjust, and for savings to reach shoppers. The high prices of the 2025 holiday season are already locked in, despite the ruling. The tariff fight became a political crisis for the Trump administration, which lashed out at the courts and painted the rulings as existential threats to the nation. The Supreme Court's decision, however, was a rare rebuke from a conservative majority bench, prioritizing constitutional limits over political loyalty. For Trump, it's a major policy defeat that weakens his America First image and emboldens critics within his own party. The administration must now pivot, with IEPA off the table for tariffs. Alternative options like Section 122 or Section 301 of the Trade Act offer only limited temporary measures and require more procedural hurdles. Any future trade actions will face greater scrutiny and less executive leeway. The era of sweeping unilateral tariff policy is over, for now. Legal experts hail the Supreme Court's decision as a vital reaffirmation of the separation of powers, preventing the executive from unilaterally imposing taxes. Economists see the ruling as a necessary correction, though warn that unwinding the damage will take time. Supply chain managers welcome the end of constant crisis, but say companies will now prioritize resilience over efficiency, building in redundancies to guard against future shocks. Policy analysts note that while the administration still has tools like Section 122 and Section 301, these are more limited and require congressional or procedural oversight. The consensus U.S. trade policy is returning to a more traditional, legislatively driven path. The experience has left businesses wary, likely leading to more cautious, diversified supply chains. Relief for consumers will be slow, as companies gradually adjust pricing and sourcing. The ruling marks a shift back to checks and balances in economic policymaking. With the Supreme Court's landmark ruling, the United States now faces the monumental task of processing up to $1 trillion in tariff refunds, a process that will test the capacity and efficiency of federal agencies like never before. This is not just a matter of paperwork, it's a massive financial and administrative undertaking that will ripple through the entire economy. For the Treasury Department, the logistical challenge is immense. Officials must coordinate with businesses, customs authorities, and financial institutions to ensure refunds are accurate and timely, all while maintaining public trust in the system. For businesses, the decision marks a turning point. Companies can finally begin repairing disrupted supply chains, renegotiating contracts, and planning for a more stable future. Yet the scars of political risk and economic uncertainty remain fresh, reminding everyone how quickly the landscape can shift. Many companies will now prioritize resilience, seeking to diversify suppliers, build stronger risk management strategies, or even reshore production to the United States to avoid future shocks and reduce exposure to global volatility. Politically, the administration faces a critical crossroads, whether to work with Congress to craft comprehensive, bipartisan trade solutions that address long-term challenges, or to pursue new, more limited executive actions that may offer speed but carry their own risks and limitations. Each path forward is fraught with uncertainty, and every decision will have far-reaching consequences for the economy and global relations. On the international stage, the Supreme Court's decision signals a possible return to rules-based trade, offering hope for renewed cooperation and stability. This could help repair strained alliances and restore confidence among America's trading partners, yet years of uncertainty have eroded trust and some relationships may take time to fully heal. Foreign partners will be watching closely, analyzing every move and policy shift, to see if U.S. actions truly align with the spirit and letter of the court's ruling. The future of U.S. trade policy now depends on the choices made in the wake of this historic decision, as leaders weigh competing interests and priorities. The post-tariff era is just beginning, opening a new chapter in America's economic story, and with it comes a landscape filled with both new challenges and unprecedented opportunities for growth and collaboration. The Supreme Court's decision is a landmark moment, reaffirming Congress's authority over trade and taxation. By striking down the use of IEPA for sweeping tariffs, the court checks executive overreach and restores constitutional balance. The economic impact will be felt for years, as businesses recover and the U.S. returns to more stable trade policy. The ruling marks the end of a chaotic era of trade warfare and the start of a more collaborative, rules-based approach. Ultimately, the decision is a testament to the resilience of the rule of law and the enduring strength of American democracy. The debate over trade isn't over, but it will now proceed on firmer constitutional ground.